There's a parcel of grassland sitting off County Line Road near Tonkawa, Oklahoma right now. 47.25 acres. Listed at $165,375. No house, no barn, just rolling native grass and a stretch of road frontage. It's been sitting there for months while buyers scroll right past it. And here's the part that should stop you. That's not even close to the strangest listing on today's list. Oklahoma has a paradox running through its rural real estate market right now. The state's median home sale price sits around $272,000. But scattered across its back roads are ranches, farmhouses, and bare acreage listed for a fraction of that. Sometimes for less than a used pickup truck, and almost nobody is buying them. Not because they're worthless. Because each one carries a very specific, very real reason buyers keep walking away. Today, we're counting down 10 of these properties, from the most expensive to the cheapest, all currently listed, all real addresses you could look up yourself. We're starting at $340,000 and ending at a property that costs less than a lot of used cars. And that final one, the cheapest of the bunch, might honestly be the best deal on this entire list. The reason it's still sitting unsold has nothing to do with the land itself. Stick around, because by the end you'll understand exactly why. Let's start at the top. Before number 10, if you're new here, we track down these listings ourselves every week. Real properties, real prices, no fluff. Hit subscribe for more of these countdowns because we cover a different state every few episodes. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, because some of you might genuinely live a few hours from one of these deals without realizing it. Number 10 on our list sits off County Road 2561 near Pawhuska in Osage County. It's listed at $340,000. There's no house on this one, just open ground. What you're buying here is pure ranching infrastructure. A working cattle corral is already built and fenced, ready for livestock the day you close. 2 ponds sit on the property, both spring-fed, both holding water year-round according to the listing, which matters a lot in a state where summer droughts can dry up a lot of stock ponds by August. The land has frontage on a maintained road, which sounds minor until you've tried to get a cattle trailer down a rutted section line in the rain. There's no home here, so there's no tour to give you. What you're buying is grazing capacity, water, and access, the 3 things a working ranch actually needs before anyone even thinks about building a house. Pawhuska is the seat of Osage County, home to a little under 3,000 people, and it's been losing population slowly for years. A trickle-down effect from the decline of the oil boom that once made this county one of the wealthiest per capita places in America. The town has a hospital, Wazaji Health Center, and sits under an hour from Bartlesville and around an hour from Tulsa for anything more specialized. Here's why nobody's buying it. Raw land with no structure on it doesn't qualify for a normal residential mortgage. Banks that will happily finance a house won't touch bare acreage the same way. Land loans typically demand 20 to 50% down, shorter terms, and higher interest rates than a conventional home loan. That shrinks the buyer pool down to cash buyers and serious cattle operators, and there just aren't that many of either shopping in Osage County pasture land right now. Annual property taxes on a property like this, based on Oklahoma's statewide average effective rate of roughly 0.85%, would land somewhere around $2,900 a year, listed at $340,000. Next up, we head northwest to Noble County, where 80 acres are sitting quietly outside the small town of Morrison. Number 9 is listed at $335,000 for 80 acres, and like our last property, this one is undeveloped, no house included in the price. What makes it different is the terrain itself. The listing highlights it as genuine wildlife habitat, with a picturesque pond anchoring the middle of the property and enough cover and variety in the brush line to attract deer and turkey without any work from a new owner. This is the kind of tract hunters dream about and rarely buy because it sits in an awkward pricing zone. Too small to run a serious cattle operation profitably on its own, and too expensive per acre for a weekend hunting camp when cheaper, larger tracts exist 30 minutes away. Morrison is a town of a few hundred people in Noble County, which sits between Stillwater and Ponca City, both of which have full hospital systems within a 30 to 40-minute drive. The county itself has stayed relatively flat in population for the last decade, neither booming nor collapsing, just quietly aging in place the way a lot of rural Oklahoma counties are. Here's the reason this one is sitting. Appraisers struggle to comp undeveloped recreational land like this. There simply aren't enough recent sales of similar acreage, similar terrain, and similar pond features nearby to build a confident appraisal. And if the bank's appraisal comes in under the asking price, the deal usually falls apart right there, regardless of what the buyer is willing to pay. That gap between what a buyer will offer and what an appraiser can justify on paper kills more rural land deals than almost anything else. Property tax here, at that same statewide average rate, comes out to somewhere around $2,850 annually, listed at $335,000. From Noble County, we drop down into Garfield County to a little community called Hunter. Population small enough that most Oklahomans have never heard of it. Property number 8 is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house sitting on 5 acres, 2,694 square feet under roof, listed at $275,000. That square footage number is genuinely surprising for a 2-bedroom layout, and it comes from a ground floor built out well beyond what you'd expect, plus additional finished space that gives the home a sprawling, almost farmhouse compound feel rather than a tight little rural cottage. The listing highlights an inviting front porch, the kind built for sitting with coffee and watching the sun come up over open pasture. The land itself is fully fenced, 5 acres of it, enough to keep a couple of horses or a small herd without needing to lease neighboring ground. And there are 2 large barns already standing on the property, structures that would cost a serious amount of money to build new today, given how lumber and steel prices have moved over the last few years. Hunter sits in Garfield County, a short drive from Enid, which has a full regional hospital and is the county's economic anchor. But Hunter itself is barely a wide spot in the road, and Garfield County's rural townships have been steadily losing residents to Enid and to the bigger metro pull of Oklahoma City for a generation. So why is a 5-acre property with 2 barns and nearly 2,700 square feet sitting unsold at this price? Unusual floor plans are part of it. A 2-bedroom home with this much square footage reads oddly on paper to an appraiser and to a lender running standard comparables, because most buyers searching for a family home in this price range expect 3 or 4 bedrooms, not 2 bedrooms spread across a much larger footprint. It technically qualifies for what a lot of buyers want, space and outbuildings, but it doesn't match what most search filters are built to find. Annual property tax here runs approximately $2,340 based on the statewide average rate, listed at $275,000. Bridge to the next one. And speaking of listings that don't match what buyers are searching for, our next property has been sitting so long, it's actually become something of a running joke among local agents. Number 7 takes us to Seminole County, just outside Wewoka, where 13.82 acres are listed at $250,000. This is bare land again, But the standout feature is infrastructure that's rare for undeveloped acreage in this price range. Three-phase electricity is already run to the property. For anyone planning a shop, a well pump, or light agricultural processing, that's a massive head start, since running it out from scratch can cost tens of thousands of dollars on its own. And here's the number that should make you pause. This property has been listed for 509 days. That's close to a year and a half of sitting on the market with almost no movement. Wewoka is the county seat of Seminole County, and it carries the scars of a boom and bust oil history better than almost anywhere else in the state. Back in the 1920s, the population briefly rocketed toward 20,000 people during the Greater Seminole oilfield rush. Today, it sits at right around 3,000 residents and continues to shrink slightly year over year. The town has its own hospital, but for anything beyond basic care, residents head towards Shawnee or Oklahoma City. The why nobody's buying story here is straightforward once you see the county's history. A shrinking population means a shrinking pool of local buyers. And outside buyers searching for land don't typically search by infrastructure features like three-phase power. They search by acreage and price. So this property's best selling point is nearly invisible in a normal online search. Combine that with no residential structure, which again limits financing to land loans and cash buyers, and you get 509 days and counting. Property tax here comes out to roughly $2,125 a year at the state average rate, listed at $250,000. Next, we head into Leflore County, to a stretch of road so remote, the community itself is simply named Short. Number 6 is priced at $239,900 for a parcel of land along East 1000 Road in Short, Oklahoma. There's no home listed here either. What you're paying for is timber and privacy. The listing describes mature cedars and towering pines covering the property, the kind of established tree cover that takes decades to grow and can't be recreated by planting saplings on a bare lot. It sits on a quiet dead-end road, which cuts down through traffic to essentially nothing, appealing if privacy is genuinely your top priority, and a serious drawback if you ever want to resell to someone who values easy access. Leflore County sits in the far southeastern corner of the state in the foothills of the Ouachita Mountains, and it's one of the more sparsely populated, economically challenged counties in Oklahoma. The community of Short doesn't even show up on most population maps because it's so small. The nearest hospital care is in Potoy, roughly 30 minutes away, with more advanced facilities another 45 minutes further in Fort Smith, Arkansas. Here's why this one is still sitting. This exact stretch of East 1000 Road actually has several parcels listed at once, right next to each other, all from the same general area, all competing for the same tiny slice of buyers interested in remote Leflore County timberland. When 5 similar properties sit on the same road at the same time, they cannibalize each other's buyer pool instead of creating urgency. A buyer serious about this stretch of road has 4 other nearly identical options to compare against, which tends to slow every single one of them down. Estimated annual property tax lands around $2,040, listed at $239,900. We're at the halfway point, and here's where the story shifts. Every property left on this list is priced under $220,000, several under $200,000, and one is genuinely cheaper than most used cars. If you want to see how low this goes, subscribe now, because the reasons get even stranger as the prices drop. Number 5 brings us back to Osage County to a house outside the tiny community of Winona, listed at $219,500. This is a real home. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, 2,888 square feet, sitting on 3 acres. The listing calls out a private water well on the property, which means no dependence on a rural water co-op and no monthly water bill, a detail that matters more than people expect once they actually live rural for a year. There are also 2 separate water heaters serving the home, useful for a house this size where a single unit would leave someone taking a cold shower during peak usage. The home has enough room to spread out. 4 bedrooms is genuinely rare to find under $220,000 anywhere close to a metro area in this country right now, let alone with 3 acres attached. Winona is a small community even by Osage County standards, home to a few hundred people, and it sits close enough to Skiatook and Tulsa that a genuine commute is possible, roughly 45 minutes to an hour depending on traffic. The nearest hospital care is in Skiatook or Bartlesville, both within a half-hour drive. So why hasn't this sold? Rural water wells and older septic systems make some conventional lenders nervous because both require inspections that add time and can occasionally surface expensive repair needs that a buyer wasn't budgeting for. On top of that, this is open plain country, and homeowners' insurance premiums in tornado-prone rural Oklahoma have climbed noticeably over the last few years, enough that some buyers get through underwriting only to be surprised by an insurance quote that changes their monthly math. Annual property tax on this one runs approximately $1,865. Listed at $219,500. From Winona, we head southeast to Sequoyah County near the Arkansas border to a fully updated farmhouse outside Muldrow. Number 4 is listed at $205,000. A 3-bedroom, 2-bath farmhouse on 2.87 acres, 1,236 square feet. Unlike a lot of properties on this list, this one has actually been renovated recently and thoughtfully. The listing describes fresh vinyl flooring throughout, an inviting front porch with a swing, exactly the picture most people imagine when they think little country place. The driveway is long and set back from the road, giving real privacy despite the modest acreage. This isn't a fixer-upper. It's move-in ready. Muldrow sits just a few miles from the Arkansas state line, close enough that plenty of residents commute across the border into Fort Smith for work, which has actually helped stabilize Sequoyah County's population better than a lot of its rural neighbors. The nearest full hospital is in Fort Smith, about 20 minutes away, with a smaller regional facility closer in Sallisaw. Here's the honest answer for why this one hasn't moved. 2.87 acres sits in an awkward middle ground. It's too small to interest anyone looking to actually run livestock or hay production, but it's larger than what most subdivision-style buyers are shopping for, and it comes with rural realities like a septic system and well water that a first-time buyer moving out from town might not be prepared to manage. It's caught between 2 different buyer types, and neither one sees it as exactly what they were looking for. Estimated property tax comes to around $1,745 a year, listed at $205,000. Bridgeline. Speaking of buyers who get scared off by well water and septic systems, our next property has almost the opposite problem. A house that looks perfect on paper and still can't seem to close. Number 3 takes us to Noble County again, to a house outside Perry listed at $169,800. This one is 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, 1,700 square feet, and the listing leads with new siding, a detail that matters more than it sounds because siding replacement on a home this size can easily run into 5 figures, and it's already done. There's also a private water well on the property, and the listing notes a recently remodeled kitchen, new cabinets, new countertops, the kind of update that usually helps a house sell faster, not slower. Perry is the county seat of Noble County, a town of a few thousand people that's held roughly steady in population for years, anchored by its proximity to Interstate 35 and a reasonable commute to Stillwater. The town has its own hospital, Perry Memorial, giving residents local access to basic and emergency care without needing to drive to a bigger city. So why is a remodeled move-in ready home under $170,000 still sitting? This is where mortgage rates come into the picture directly. At current rates, a loan on a property in this price range produces a monthly payment that pushes right up against what a lot of first-time buyers can actually qualify for once property taxes and insurance are folded in, especially with today's tighter debt-to-income standards. Meanwhile, the home is priced just high enough that cash buyers, who'd sidestep that entire rate problem, are mostly shopping in cheaper price brackets further down this list instead. It's stuck in a gap between the cash buyer market below it and the easily financed market above it. Annual property tax runs approximately $1,445, listed at $169,800. Number 2 brings us back up to Kay County, to that 47-acre grassland parcel outside Tonkawa we opened this video with. Listed at $165,375, 47.25 acres, no structure. The listing highlights genuine rural road frontage, meaning legal, deeded access directly off a maintained county road, which sounds small until you've dealt with a landlocked parcel that requires an easement just to reach it. It's classified as pure grassland, the kind of open native pasture that's been used for grazing for generations across this part of the state. Kay County includes Tonkawa and the larger city of Ponca City, which has carried a full hospital system and a long industrial history tied to the oil and refining business. But like a lot of counties anchored by a single major employer, Kay County has felt the impact when that industry contracts, and population growth here has been essentially flat to slightly negative for years. Here's why 47 acres of clean, accessible grassland is still sitting unsold. Land loans for pure grazing acreage without any water feature, timber, or existing improvements typically get valued conservatively by lenders, often in the range of a smaller percentage of the land's market value per acre compared to improved or recreational tracts. That means a buyer needs a larger cash down payment relative to the purchase price than they would for almost any other type of property on this list. And that single requirement quietly filters out a huge share of otherwise interested buyers. Estimated annual property tax comes to around $1,405, listed at $165,375. And now, the property we promised you at the very beginning. The cheapest listing on today's list, and arguably the best deal in this entire countdown. Number 1 takes us back to Short, Oklahoma, to a different parcel on that same East 1000 road we visited earlier in this video. This one is listed at $53,900. There's no home here. This is raw acreage, and the listing describes it plainly as suited for outdoor recreation and hunting, sitting in the same quiet, heavily timbered stretch of LaFleur County we already told you about. Per acre, this is genuinely one of the most affordable pieces of usable rural ground you'll find listed in the entire state of Oklahoma right now. So why has this one, the cheapest property on our entire list, been sitting here largely unnoticed? It comes back to that same cluster problem we mentioned earlier. Except now it's working against this parcel even harder because it's the smallest and least developed of the group. Buyers searching land sites tend to click into the first listing in a cluster that catches their eye and stop there. never scrolling down to compare the 4 or 5 nearly identical parcels sitting right beside it. This property gets buried under its own neighbors in the search results, competing against land it's genuinely tied to. It's not a bad property, it's an invisible one, a genuinely solid, cheap piece of ground, getting lost in a sea of nearly identical listings on the exact same road. Estimated annual property tax on a property this size and price comes to somewhere around $458 a year, listed at $53,900. So here's the pattern running through all 10 properties, top to bottom. It's not that Oklahoma land is worthless, and it's not that these places hide some fatal flaw nobody's telling you about. It's that rural real estate runs on a different set of rules than suburban real estate, and most buyers and most lenders are still applying suburban logic to land that was never built for it. Bare acreage gets stuck without conventional financing. Small acreage falls into a no man's land between hobbyists and working ranchers. Clustered listings on the same rural road cannibalize each other's visibility. And even fully renovated, move-in ready homes get squeezed by mortgage rates and insurance costs that didn't exist a decade ago. The trade-off is real too, and it's worth saying plainly. Longer drives to a hospital, fewer jobs within easy commuting distance. Shrinking populations in some of these counties, which affects everything from school enrollment to the local tax base over time. This isn't a story about hidden treasure with no downside. It's a story about genuinely affordable land that comes with genuine rural trade-offs attached. For what it's worth, several properties on today's list, particularly the ones with existing homes, would likely qualify for USDA Rural Development Loan Programs, which are specifically designed for exactly this kind of eligible rural area and can require little to no down payment for qualified buyers. Whether that applies to your situation depends entirely on your own financial picture, and that's a conversation for a lender, not for a YouTube video. This is for educational purposes only, not financial advice. So tell me, out of all 10 properties, which one would you actually buy? The 5-acre spread with 2 barns near Hunter, that 47-acre grassland outside Tonkawa, or that tiny $53,000 parcel in Short that started this whole conversation? Drop the number in the comments. And if you want this same countdown done in a different state next time, stick around because we're already digging through listings for the next one.